I needed to have them all refreshed. One funny thing I've got to tell you was when we came from Canada, Mother had Evelyn and myself in long underwear. It was February when we came. And I had long underwear. Evelyn had long underwear. And it was warm, which we just couldn't get over because we'd left mountains of snow and snowshoes and ice skates and toboggans and all the things that we... And we had come 2,500 miles. And we had made friends with all the porters and that made our bed up in the, on the train and the Pullman and everything, and eating in those wonderful places. And they're long gone. I guess they're on some trains, through trains. But anyway, it was fun. Evelyn was sick the whole time. She didn't enjoy anything. She was, I don't know what was the matter with her. Motion sick, I guess, and that train just wouldn't quit. It just kept going. Yeah. Well, she was all curled up, and I wanted someone to play with, so I would engage the porter that would come to make our bed and wait on us and polish Daddy's shoes and do all the fun things, And so anyway, I think I told you we stopped in St. Louis to visit Uncle Harry, and he called us his Canadian Valentines. So then we came lickety-split on to Oklahoma City. I couldn't wait to get here. I just thought, oil and Indians, oh, how fun it's going to be. I expected an Indian to meet us at this station. I really did. I just thought it was going to be very different. But anyway, back to the long underwear. It was hot as blue blazes, one of those warm February days down south. So I would scratch and scratch. When you're too hot, how it is. So we just scratched, Evelyn and I both. But Mother wouldn't hear to us taking them off. And I noticed when we went to church and all the little girls had on knee socks in the winter, So I went to school and nearly died. And I would go to the girls' restroom and roll up my long underwear. We had high-top shoes. And I'd take everything apart and roll up the underwear up under my dress. And then I'd roll these great big heavy socks down below my knee. I wanted to conform, be like all the other girls. And besides, it was so much cooler. So then I would be just paralyzed with fear because I thought maybe Mother and Daddy would come to visit school. I was new there and so forth and so on. And I don't think they did that but one time that I can ever remember. So I was afraid, and for nothing really. But it worked on me. I had a guilty conscience. So anyway, the long underwear finally departed about May. Mother conceded and let us take it off in May. But the darling family that met us at the train, I still keep up with. John Miller's retired from the bank, and Alice, the daughter, is down in Louisiana. She has 3 sons. One of them is a Presbyterian minister. And it's just fun to talk to them and keep up with them, And it's John's daughter that has the multiple sclerosis. So I call her every now and again, and she's so dear, but so limited. They're just about like Joni. There's just nothing she can really do. So I don't know what she's doing. She runs a steady conversation with people. If they call and she's unable to answer the phone, she takes the messages and her life's taken up with being with other people on telephone. Well, anyway, let's see what happened next. Oh, what happened next was that Trinity, Daddy, they just loved Daddy, and they took me in, and I had a wonderful Sunday school teacher, Mrs. Ray of the Ray's Nursery in Oklahoma City here. She was my Sunday school teacher. She gave me a little Bible. I've still got it. And but anyway, Daddy baptized Evelyn and me, and he baptized us together. I don't know how he ever did it, but he did. We weren't, very big. But anyway, I guess we were 12, 13, something like that, 14. But anyway, I remember being so good and felt so holy for about a week. That's about as much as I understood what was going on. And, oh my heavens, I would just pray with everybody and stay after church and kneel down at the pew and pray for everybody's mother and dad. And, oh, there was one girl, Inez Kaiser, that was one of my best friends. And her father was alcoholic. Oh, that made a good prayer. We prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed. I don't know whatever happened to him. I don't know whether God was able to intervene or whether he'd let him intervene or what. But anyway, came to find out your mother and dad introduced me to Inez Kaiser's son, who is a member of New Covenant. And when he first joined, and his wife's name's Carol, it was such a divine coincidence. It really was. And so anyway, we followed that up. Had fun on that. But let's see, from Trinity, we went to daily vacation Bible school. We had sword drills. The Word of God is the sword of the Spirit. And what we do would be to line up 2 lines of kids. And then the teacher, the leader, whoever it was, would call out the references, like John 3:16, John 14:27, whatever. And the first one of the 2 lines of kids would step forward with their Bible and read it. And so then the one that, the side that had the most, had some wonderful honor or something, I don't know what, or apples or something. But anyway, I really believe that's where I got my foundation in Scripture. And they just seem to click. I just seem to know where they are. And of course, at home, I know I absorbed more from my mother and dad than I realized. I just don't remember. Huh? Oh, sure. Because I remember one thing. Oh, well, I'll tell you when we get to Columbus. We're still in Oklahoma. But anyway, what I was going to tell you was, Daddy discovered that Evelyn and I were absolutely antagonistic. We fought from morning to night. We would have to do the dishes, and we'd just fight. It was horrible. So Mother would finally separate us. Well, Daddy had the wonderful idea that it was nearly time for Evelyn to be graduating from high school and everything, and he sent her back to Netherwood Girls' School in Rothsay, New Brunswick, Canada. And all of our relatives were there, and she'd spend the holidays with Uncle Waylon and Auntie Bert in Fredericton, and Ruth, and the four kids in that family, cousins of ours. So anyway, she ended up spending 2 years there. And she came home 1 year and then went back. And I guess the folks had a little peace while she was gone, because I didn't have anybody to fight with. And really, I don't remember being mad about anything, especially we just didn't get along. And to this day, ever since I've ever really known my sister well, she's different from me. I'm different from her. And we were too young to understand those things or appreciate each other's differences. You and David don't fuss, do you? Yeah, I think sisters and brothers. Did you fuss?
I was the youngest, and by the time I was born, they were gone, pretty much.
Uh-huh. Oh, my. Look what he missed. Well, anyway, what happened was, we've gotten through daily vacation Bible school, and Daddy just stayed in Oklahoma 6 years. The people were it was a culture shock for him, I'm sure, and for Mother, because it was so different from the English way they were brought up. And so he had a call to go to Columbus, Georgia, this huge, beautiful First Baptist Church there. I remember when he left to go down there to preach for them or something. I don't know all the technicalities. I wish I'd been old enough to understand that, but I didn't. So Evelyn and I just thought it was the end of the world to go clear down in Georgia, South Georgia, Columbus. It was central, I guess. But anyway, we were uprooted again. And I remember the first week we were there. It was fortunate because ministers' families were accepted. You know, down south, they're pretty clannish, and the fact that they really are. And of course, I was accepted because of Dad. And everybody knew by my speech that I was either from Fort Benning, a military family, or minister. And all these Fort Benning people, they always called it, they called Columbus the cradle of the Army, because all these cute cadets would come down there and get married. Columbus just supplied all these darling little brides. And Evelyn and I went to a few dances out there at the country club when they'd be there, you know, maybe for 6 weeks or something, and they'd call all the gals that were the right age and invite them to come out and be with the fellas. 15. I was 15. I remember having my 16th birthday there, and I was so lonely because I didn't know anybody. Oh, it was pretty lonely. But anyway, I remember the kids, when we'd get together with some of the young people, they'd put me out in the kitchen, and the fellas would stand me up on the table and say, "Now talk." They wanted to hear this Oklahoma, you know. And we went home to Canada around this time, I guess, or just after we left Oklahoma, or maybe while we were there. I can't clearly remember. But I remember my Uncle Wayland, my dad's oldest brother. He said, "Carol, you are murdering the King's English." He said, "It's not out, it's out. And it's not house, it's house." And oh, he really set me down. I was so conscious, self-conscious after that, I could hardly talk. I didn't want to murder the King's language. King's English is what he said. But it was different. And, well, I went to high school in Columbus 1 year. And then Evelyn was back in Canada, so we got along just fine. But she came home. And so Daddy decided to send me off to school. So he sent me to Ward Belmont in Nashville, Tennessee, a girls' school, a finishing school, and I mean, I got finished. Oh, my roommate was from Rochester, New York, where Meg is from, and she and I got to be great buddies because she didn't know anybody down south either, and I didn't either. So we just we just got along fine. Well, that went on well. And do you know that it came to graduation time, and the president of the university, of the college, junior college, called me in, and he said, "Carol, your father is going to preach the baccalaureate." He said he's coming from Columbus, Georgia. And he said, "I didn't realize till just now that he had a daughter here." And I thought, well, it was quite an honor. It was really, really good. And so time went on, and on, and finally, this friend that I had, he was a lot older than I was, here in Oklahoma City when I was 15. Oh, I forgot to tell you about Harold. I met Harold when I was 15 in Oklahoma City. And at a fraternity dinner, the fraternity mother was a member of Dad's church. And she thought one Sunday she'd have the boys from Phi Chi Fraternity at OCU have them over to her home for dinner. But she wanted to have several girls there to sort of be hostesses and so forth. So she invited her nieces and me. So I was sitting next to Harold, and he told Leroy Lewis, his best friend, he said, I'm going to marry her. That's what he said that first day. Well, he never asked me for a date because Mother wouldn't even let me date the high school boys. At 15, you know, I just couldn't. So Harold talked to Mother, never talked to me, called her and said he wanted to have a date to take me to the horse show. Out in Packentown, they used to have these beautiful horse shows out there. And so when I came home from school that day, I said, Mother, what's going on? She had gotten this blue taffeta dress out that I had for some occasion, glee club or something at school, you know. And she was getting it out, and she was going to have the dressmaker do something to it. I said, what's going on? She says, well, you're going to the horse show with Harold Dobson. And I said, Mother, you got to be kidding. And I said, he's at OCU, and I'm just a sophomore Classen. He's a senior. No, I guess he was a junior. He stayed out of school one year. Anyway, I got sort of excited because I couldn't believe my family was going to let me loose with a fella, you know. It was something else. And he had a little car with a rumble seat. Harold did. So he had Leroy Lewis drive the car so Harold and I could sit in the rumble seat. And I hadn't even seen a rumble seat, let alone driven in one. But came to find out later that one of the boys at Trinity here in Oklahoma City had been a fraternity brother of Harold's. And when he found out that Harold was going to have a date with Carol Dobson, he just he'd, because I was just a little young squirt at Trinity, you know, and he really teased Harold. And Harold will tell you that he thought I was about 18. I had long hair and had it done up in a bun or something. I don't know. I really put on the dog. And so anyway, he kept up with me, and I with him by mail, and he went off to Boston University, had a scholarship from OCU, and we sort of drifted completely and totally. So this other fellow that was his same age and a neighbor, in fact, it was the son of that house mother that had the party that introduced Harold and me, and he just wanted very much to get married. Well, I thought, oh, well, I don't have to worry about that, you know. I'm only 15. course, I felt like I was 25. But anyway, he finally put the pressure on. And after I got out of school, he just appeared right there in Nashville and drove Daddy and me back to Columbus and brought with him a diamond engagement ring. So anyway, I thought, well, this just can't be. This isn't real, you know. And I was expecting opposition from my family. But Daddy, I think that this young man went down to Daddy's office, as best as I can remember, and told him that he just really blackmailed him, told him if we didn't agree to our marriage, that we'd run off. I didn't, that was a lie. I'd never even discussed it with him, didn't know a thing about such, wouldn't dare do anything like that. But anyway, Haskell. And anyway, he had just graduated from Cincinnati University and came back to Oklahoma, and then went straight down to get me. And he was an only child, and his mother had given him her Cadillac, and she had married, she was a widow, and moved up north and left him the house. So Haskell was all on fire, ready to go. So anyway, Evelyn kept egging me on. She was home for the summer, and she wanted to be a bridesmaid. And she thought, oh, that's going to be exciting, you know. And I remember Daddy married us after the morning service at high noon. And I don't remember very many people staying, but I'm sure they did. 17. And I remember Mother just begging Daddy. She said, oh, Fred, just let me have her till she's 18 anyway. She doesn't know a thing. I didn't even know how to boil water. I didn't even know you cooked vegetables in water. I could cook toast in the toaster. That was it, because we always had a real good colored cook. And we had Eva. You met Eva. You were scared to death of her when you came down there. But she was so sweet, and her name was Eva Christian, and she was a jewel. But anyway, I didn't know a thing. I lost about 10 pounds the first 2 months I was here. But that didn't last long, because it was the middle of the Depression, and Haskell could not get any. He was an engineer. Bethlehem, Bethurum, it's German. Anyway, he couldn't get work, so I remember the only thing he could do was to go to work for Kroger, which was the Piggly Wiggly, I guess, a branch of the Piggly Wiggly. Well, that left me alone, and I nearly died. Because all my friends were in college, and we didn't go to church anywhere, didn't have anything. And he was just torn to shreds because he had to work so hard, had to get up early, you know, and work like a diggy dog. And we just didn't have any life, so I gave up. And after about 9 months of it, I just said, I'm going home. I'm going home. And so Haskell looked in the paper, and we found, you know, people used to get rides. Do you remember that? Well, I mean, hearing about it. People, when they were going to travel from one part of the United States to another, they'd advertise for riders. So Haskell found me turned out to be one of the high school people that I knew. I don't know whether it was the principal or who it was, but he was going to Atlanta. So he agreed to take me to Columbus for a certain amount. So I remember he had 2 or 3 other passengers, and it was funny. I don't remember too much about it, but we got home, and it was I was an embarrassment to my folks, because I wasn't fixing to stay married. I was just it was just a bad deal. And so they were so sweet to me, but Daddy said, honey, you've got to go back to Oklahoma. By then I was 18. And I said, okay. So he put me on the train, and I came back. And about that time, Haskell knew that we weren't going to make it, that I was just determined. And so I got a little room in a boarding house somewhere, I don't know where it was, and I was roaming around downtown, not knowing what to do. And guess who I ran into? Harold. I felt somebody come up behind me and just slip their arm through mine. And I looked up, and it was Harold Dobson. And I hadn't seen him for years, you know. And he said, well, how's my little gal? And he was real sweet. And, oh, he did come through Nashville to see me once on his way to Boston. And he left me his fraternity pin. Of course, like a dumb dodo, I took it. So he had to just send out, when Haskell and I were married, he had to send somebody from the company where he was to get it. So I still hadn't seen him, you know. But anyway, it all began to work out, and Harold, the diplomat that he is, he's a diplomat. Your dad's a diplomat. And so anyway, Harold knew Haskell. They'd been in high school together or something. And so he talked to him and told him that we had met and that I was going to leave him, you know, and get a divorce anyway. And would he mind if Harold took me out? You know, I wasn't living with Haskell. So everything worked out. And huh? Oh, yeah. I like the way they worked out, too. And, you know, to this day, Harold thinks everything that happened. He moved to Oklahoma from Kansas with his people, and from Claremore and all, the same year that we moved here from Canada. And the way we met was an accident, a divine accident, and all that sort of thing. And then I'd gone crazy and didn't wait for him or anything, you know. But he swallowed his pride, and we got married. We got married in Dallas. And little Nana and I drove down there. And Harold had some of his college friends, and he'd been on a University of Tours back east. Where's east? Oh, that way. Yeah. And so they were witnesses to our wedding, and we were married by the president of TCU. And that was, what is TCU? University. That's just right. In Dallas. And then we went on out to his folks in Wichita, Kansas, in this old beat-up car. You know, it was... I didn't know anything about the Depression except what I had in Oklahoma. I really didn't, because I was protected to a certain extent. But anyway, then after we got married and came back home, almost before I could turn around, I was pregnant with Paige. I was just thrilled to death, because I didn't have any family. I thought, well, we'll just stay here and have one. Have our very own family. And so I just couldn't wait. But anyway, Paige was born, Mother did come up for Paige's arrival. And we got the colored cook that we used to have when Mother and Daddy lived here, and Katie. And I want you to know we had Katie with Paige, and then I looked her up and had her when Bud was born, and had her again when John was born. And then we lost track of her. She was pretty well up in years, but oh, she was sweet. And I've got pictures of her holding Paige, and she was so black, and Paige was so blonde and darling, you know. And she just loved Paige. And she loved all the boys. But anyway, let me see. We got married, didn't we? Yeah. Well, time went on, and Paige began to grow up and all that sort of thing, and we bought a duplex over on the east side, East 16th, and we rented one side to Doris and Frank Andrews, and Doris had been one of Harold's students when he was teaching at OCU. He taught there for a while, but pretty soon the Depression was so great, and white-collar positions were just about starved to death. So Harold couldn't raise a family, you know, and keep his position out of OCU, so he went back in the printing business at Semco. And he ended up as manager there, and it was so time-consuming. I just hardly ever saw him. It was pretty rugged. But anyway, I decided that the east side was no place to raise Paige, and Bud was a baby. I just didn't like it. So we bought this darling little house out on Lombardy Road, and he went to Horace Mann, and that's how we went to Crown Heights Christian Church, because it was near, and we could walk if we had to. Harold worked 7 days a week often. And so that worked out. Paige was so responsive to everything that was going on there, because when we were on the east side, we didn't even go to church except Easter and Christmas down at the First Methodist Church. But anyway, time went on, and Paige got acquainted with Daddy. We'd put him on the train, and he'd go, and Daddy'd meet him at the railroad station, and instead of taking him home, they'd go out the ballpark. He and Paige became great friends, and when I took him to church, he would hang on to Daddy's leg. He was just about 3 or 4 years old, you know, and the people with this southern accent would come out and say, "Oh, he just looks like the doctor stewed down." Looks like the doctor stewed down, and he still does. But anyway, we had a peck of fun. And then Buddy came along, and he was cut out of a different pattern. He objected to everything, just about. And I didn't know how to handle him. I'd never even seen any boys. I had one sister. And I just thought all the boys were like Paige, which was absolutely erroneous. So Bud was a handful. In fact, I never will get over the way that the teachers mishandled him at Horace Mann. When he'd misbehave or something, they'd look at him and say, "You're not Paige Dobson's brother, are you?" Which would just wither anybody. You know, it was horrible. And on top of that, the teachers were experimenting with a different kind of teaching to read. They did away with phonetics. And so they'd hold up a pencil or something like that and spell it for him, put it on the board, say, "Now every time you see that, you think of a pencil." Everything was memory. And Buddy never learned to read. Well, all the kids in his classes didn't. They went on to junior high school, none of them could read. So then they decided to put phonetics back in the school system, but he had really suffered. And so we sent him down to OU to summer school, and he was supposed to learn phonetics down there. And he did. He was smart as a whip, but he didn't have anything to go on. So anyway, he just had lots of trouble. So, and I was so dumb, I didn't know a thing about what I should be doing for him. But anyway, God was good. His mercy is everlasting, and his truth endureth forever. But then came John. And that just made tripled my concern over boys. And he was completely, totally different from either of the other two. But he was sweet. So then I finally got tired. I said, this is the old me. I was tired of being married and raising a family alone. I was sick and tired of it. So all I could think of was to divorce Harold. And God provided, because I went out to Tinkerfield with an insurance company. And I made money hand over fist. And Paige was ready to go off to college. And I made money for about three years. But John and Bud had to go to private school, because I wasn't there regularly to take care of the kids. I just wasn't. I had a housekeeper, but she scared them to death. So Thelma, she'd say, I'm just a worman. I'm just a worman. She had a limit to what you could do. Oh, Thelma was an education to me, I'll tell you. But anyway, they went to this Paradise School. And they didn't have very many private schools at that point. And it was a Christian school, but she had a lot of kids that were having troubles in school. And Bud was in trouble. There was no getting around it. She straightened him out, and nothing flat. When he graduated, he made the Honor Society at high school and everything. And she warned Harold and me to have strict discipline when we went back together, you know. So anyway, they grew up, and John grew up. And I remember when John was 16, we bought a home over on Bryant. You remember Bryant? And about that time, I think, Paige and Ned got married in 1958. And Mother and Daddy came down to the wedding, and it was real thrilling. And so, let's see what I was going to tell you, though. Yeah. John was 16, and his 16th birthday, we got him one of those little midget MGs. Did you ever run into one? Well, it wasn't any bigger than a minute, hardly, and he was about 5'8" by then, or 9. He's 6 feet now. But anyway, he looked out on the driveway and saw that little car and just about went to pieces. He was so delighted. So then he went out to take his driver test that same day, like all 16-year-olds do. And he went out, and he was so excited he flunked it. And he came home, and he was the saddest thing you ever saw. And they wouldn't give it to him over again for a week. So that little MG sat in the driveway for a week. And he went out and took it, passed with flying colors. And I remember he started, let's see, 16. He was going to high school, Northeast. Sure he was. And I began smelling smoke on his breath, cigarette smoke. And I thought, oh, heavens, what do I do now? Meanwhile, Harold and I had remarried. And the way we remarried was that I got sick and had to have surgery, and I was weak, in a weakened condition. I let him go home. That was awful. But anyway, praise God, I did. The Lord knew what he was doing. And while I got to back up just a little bit to tell you one miracle that changed my life. Paige was at OU, and I was out at Tinker, and we were divorced, and I was just having a blast. I was dating all these officers and going to parties and dances, and I never had a girlhood. And I was just having a blast at the price of my kids. Because they were in private school, and I just saw them occasionally, weekends and so forth and so on. And the Lord's forgiven me. Praise God. I'm not perfect, just forgiven. Oh, amen. And but Paige came home one weekend, and he had been writing me cards saying his stomach hurt. And I said, "We'll come home and we'll go to the doctor." So we did, and found out he had a duodenal ulcer. Well, I'll tell you, it did something to me, because I had depended on him overly because he was the oldest, and Harold was gone so much, you know, that I had depended on him for everything. And that it was just like a sword going through my heart, convicting me of being overbearing on Paige, you know, and I was so strict with him and everything. And so I remember going out in the backyard on Lombardy before we moved over on Bryant, before Harold and I came together again. And I looked up in the starry sky, and I said, "Lord, if you'll heal Paige, I'll give you my life." And I didn't even know what I was saying. I didn't. But I did, and he did. God did. He healed Paige. He even had another ulcer and healed him. He doesn't have any scar tissue. He is perfectly healed. And God didn't let go of me either. Man, he started to work on me, and I wasn't happy doing what I was doing, and I knew it was wrong, and I don't know, it wasn't overnight, but it was gradual. And my life just did a complete turnover. So then Harold and I got married again, and we went back to Columbus for our honeymoon, second honeymoon. And Paige came home from OU and sang in that little prayer chapel where we were married again. Clyde married us again. Yeah. And so anyway, that was really a miracle. I don't know which was the greatest miracle, healing Paige or changing me around. I guess salvation is the greatest miracle that can happen in the whole world, is when a person comes to themselves and comes to Christ. And everything changes. Your eyesight is entirely different. You see things you never saw before. You don't even want to look at what you looked before. You know, it was just a complete transformation. And so this was sort of gradual, and I went off to a retreat with Ada Glissman and Dr. Glissman and Daisy Fudge, you know, I don't know who all, the friends you know, and Dodie Moncrief, and all that bunch. How am I doing?